Summer seems to be the time of year when I finally get around to doing all those tasks, annoying admin, and general adult things that always seem to fall by the wayside. And it also happens to be the time when I take stock of everything in my life and in my home, and reassess whether I'm living in alignment with my values, or whether I've begun to stray a little, and why. Over the past couple of years, I've been through some pretty big changes, and life events can have a massive impact on the way we live, the things we have access to, and the stresses in our lives. Things, places, or amenities we used to depend on may no longer be available to us. We may face new challenges, new additions to the family, or we may simply feel different about our place or our role in this life. The way I view sustainability or zero-waste living has definitely changed and evolved over the years. I think back to when I was hyper-focused on fitting my waste into a jar, but not quite understanding or even considering the impact of the entire supply chain, where the real waste happens and who is responsible for holding big corporations accountable for their aggressive approach to growth and the true cost of that. I've become acutely aware that when I am not reading, I am not learning. When I am not paying attention, my world shrinks and important issues slip through the cracks. And this is where we begin. Although learning is becoming a year-round endeavor for me, the summer is when I truly have the motivation and fire to consume knowledge, learn new skills, reevaluate my efforts towards a more sustainable and equitable world, and finally organize meetups for my community to help build connections and bring people together. So today we're looking at zero-waste habits I actually do in summer. If you like the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, as it really supports my channel. Okay, grab a cup of tea and let's get into it. The farmers markets here in Denver start up again at the beginning of May, and so I make sure to go down there any Sunday I'm in town and support local. Take my own bags and make sure to have a list of everything I may need for the week. Some of my favorites will always be locally made tempeh from Little House of Tempeh, a cold brew coffee, and honestly just seeing all the cute dogs. The roads around my neighborhood are surprisingly bike friendly, so when the spring and summer comes around and the ice has finally melted from the roads, I will rely heavily on my bike again for getting around. It's taken me quite some time to get used to cycling in the US, and a city like Denver, where the drivers are wild and the cars are the size of houses. Of course, I'm used to cycling the streets of London, where you have to be careful of buses, taxis, cars, pedestrians, and miscellaneous objects. But I always have a little hesitancy when hopping on my bike in a new place. I love cycling, and I want to make sure that nothing puts me off. So I take my time, build my confidence back up, and allow my legs to transport me to the places I need to go. Okay, so spring is surprisingly wet here in Denver, which may surprise you, as it did me. And while I don't yet have a rainwater barrel, I do have a bunch of buckets that are literally no use at all right now. So I make sure to leave them out when it rains and use it to water the garden before the sun begins to steal it back. If we can ever buy a house, installing a proper rainwater barrel will be something we'll do pretty sharpish. Luckily, we live in a 680 square foot house, and so the process of cleaning and decluttering only takes a couple of days, mainly because I am thorough and very slow. I dread to think how long it would take to go through all of this in a big American house. Honestly, the size of these new builds in our neighborhood are actually ridiculous. I mean, who do they think is going to live there or can afford to live there? Anyway, last year I made a video about never wanting to declutter again. So this process is really helpful for me, particularly this year, in understanding whether my habits have changed, what I need to declutter, if anything, and why, and see if I can address any issues that may be playing a part here. I'm actually in the middle of filming an entire video of this whole process, so make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss that. I don't have a clothes horse, or space for one really, so I've started hanging up my clothes on this branch. I worried it may hurt the tree, but this branch is quite clearly dead, so I'm not too worried about it. In the Colorado sun, my clothes dry so quickly, and it really negates the need for my dryer most of the time. Now, when it comes to my sourdough starter, I rarely discard anything. Flour is expensive, food is expensive, so I'm trying to be really economical with my choices. In the summer, of course, I think everything is a little hotter, so I like to feed it and then put it in the fridge for a week. This, again, helps to prevent discarding, whilst retaining the quality of my starter. Next week, the weather is going to be in the 30s, so I've decided that it is officially summer. And part of my zero waste habits that I have taken from last year is to make my own cold brew. But on last year's video, one of you commented that I should actually make ice cubes from that cold brew as well, which to me is absolute genius. So I saved that comment right here, and we're gonna do that today. One of the reasons why I consider this a zero waste habit is simply because I can control where the coffee is from. I choose a local roasters in Denver that I am able to get as part of a coffee club deal, so there's no packaging involved on my part. I also use that waste product from the coffee grounds and give it straight to my worms, which directly feeds my garden. So when it comes to zero waste habits, now I try to think about the bigger picture rather than just thinking about specific ways that I am not wasting or end packaging and things like that. I try to think about as much as possible. What I'm going to do now is make my cold brew coffee for tomorrow. We'll make extra so that we can have a cold brew, but also make those ice cubes as well. Making cold brew is so simple. I use the same kind of ratios that I would use to make a pour over. So about 20 grams of coffee to 300 grams of water. For this, I actually used 42 grams of coffee to 700 grams of water, so kind of doubling it and adding a little bit more water than I usually would. That's just because of how much coffee came out of the grinder. I can never be 100% sure. So yeah, I'm gonna put this in the fridge now for 12 to 24 hours. The longer it sits, the better it is, but 24 hours is like my sweet spot. And then once it's ready, I will drain one of them and freeze cubes of one and then enjoy the other. Although I'm a generally active person, the spring and summer are the times when I just want to be outside all the time. So I go on a daily walk and I use this as an opportunity to habit stack. This is my favorite way to try and change my behavior. So when I go on my daily walk, I will listen to something like a podcast or a book on something new that I'm trying to learn. Maybe it's something on sustainability or climate change, the hidden life of trees, or maybe it's just a little bit of marketing. I really love to use this opportunity to look at the flowers, take in my surroundings, but also think about new ideas and new things that I could be thinking of. There are also lots of tiny libraries in my area, and I was lucky enough to find All We Can Save by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson. It's an excellent book if you've been thinking about looking for something that you want to really learn about the climate crisis and solutions. You may have seen this farm stand in my house if you've watched a previous video of mine, and usually I buy the pods with seedlings already in them. This year, however, I wanted to try experimenting with planting my own. I'm having varying success. Sometimes it's dependent on my seeds, but I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. This is just a really great way for me to save a bit of money, practice a new skill and self-sufficiency, as well as just reducing transport and some packaging. My garden is one of my happy places that I really feel like this year is a very sustainable way of growing things. I'm reusing pots from last year. I feel like there's no need to buy new pots when I just had a bunch that I really carefully stored away to make sure I had them for next year. I've also been reusing grow bags and supports and only growing enough plants to fill what I already have, so there's no need to buy more. I'm also using compost from my worms and reusing the soil that I had from last year and just adding a few amendments to make it healthy. You may have noticed that we have a few new guests in our garden. We have some baby bunnies running around, chewing dandelions and hiding in the grass. We also have lots of buzzy bees, squirrels, birds, and various little bugs. So this year I decided to leave the weeds. I didn't even really know what was a weed and what was a plant in this garden, so it felt safer just to leave everything, help with the biodiversity of the garden, and provide our guests a little shade and a welcome rest from whichever garden they're coming from and going to. I'm a big proponent of vermicompost, and of course I use all of the worm castings in all of my vegetable beds. But the compost tea is also really amazing. What I'll do when my little pot is full is simply dilute it in my watering can and put it over any of my vegetables, flowers, or plants that need it. This is a really great free plant fertilizer that's just a byproduct of something that's composting already. Last year was the first year I think I've ever saved seeds. I didn't really know how to do that, so I thought I would do it with something that seemed very simple, like marigolds. Several of the marigolds have come up themselves in beds that I just left the dried heads in, but I'm planting a few more around tomatoes because they really helped to deter pests last year, and they're just a really beautiful plant that I just love having in the garden. Now, I've lost a little bit of my joy recently. And I noticed this because I've been watching a few of my old videos where I seem to have a lot more energy and excitement and a lot more smiles. So I'm making myself a vision board, essentially a joy vision board. And I've been using magazines to create this. I want to reuse things I already have, not print off images or anything like that, just use stuff that's lying around that just needs to have a repurpose. Summer is also such a wonderful time for being outside, especially if you love things like backpacking and hiking, like I do. So dehydrating food and different fruit is something I'm very much experimenting with. Getting the right proportions can be tricky, but I find backpacking meals to be pretty expensive and can be quite wasteful. So I just wanted to experiment and see what I could do on my own. So I'm making a chickpea curry for my practice meal, my experimentation with dehydrating meals, because I think this is perfect for camping. It's got good carbs, it's got fat, protein, and it's very hearty, so it'll keep you going if you're backpacking and things like that. I'm not going to dehydrate the whole curry. I'm only going to dehydrate a small portion mixed in with some rice that I have made, because if it goes wrong, I don't want to waste an entire curry. We're going to have the rest of this for dinner, but I think because it's quite saucy, when I mix it in with the rice, that will help to absorb it. I'm going to let it cool down, and then I'm going to put it into the dehydrator with the fruit as well. If you have any experience with dehydrating food, does it matter if you put in different flavors of things? Because obviously I don't want my fruit to taste like curry. Anyway, I'm going to finish this and then we're going to put it in the dehydrator for, I think, probably 24 hours. I'm pretty excited to see where this takes me, so I'll keep you posted if you're interested. Now, as I said in the intro, learning new skills for me has become a year-round endeavor, but I have a lot more motivation and energy, and I want to have a lot more focus on learning skills in the evenings during the summer. The sun sets a lot later, so I have a few more light hours to really work on some projects. I think that repairing things is a really great zero-waste habit, and I simply want to improve those skills. I'm really inspired to try making my clothes this summer and obviously this year. There are only a couple of gaps in my wardrobe. I pretty much have everything that I need, especially from last year and the year before. A few of my clothes don't fit me anymore, so I'd like to replace them with ones that actually do. And I've been trying to learn how to make simple things using some thrifted material. For example, I thrifted this from the thrift store, and I just made a half apron with it. And this was a really good way to practice ruffles, or gathers rather, practice gathers, so that when I use it actually on a dress that I'm planning on making with this material, then I'll be much better equipped to actually go in on material that I really don't want to mess up on, but I definitely got a little bit more just in case. I really love this thrifted material, and honestly, I use this all the time. I definitely find sewing more challenging than the other skills and things that I've picked up, like crocheting or knitting, but I have also found it one of the most rewarding. And there are so many little things to learn that it's really helping me to also repair my clothes, but in a much more sophisticated way, rather than just using a hand needle to sew something up in a functional but a little bit scrappy. And I'm always trying to improve my skills, so being able to repair clothes well, I think, is a really great zero-waste skill to learn. And I'm also hoping that it will help me to learn more skills like tailoring. So if I have something that's too small or too big, or my husband has something that's too big or too small or whatever, then I can learn the skills and build upon those repairing skills to help tailor the clothes that we already have. I'm always interested in learning skills that will directly help me to value and use and reuse the items that I already have. And then I also want to learn those skills so that if I thrift some fabric, which I think is a really sustainable option, then I can make something new out of it, and it will be a very rewarding thing to have made something myself that I can actually wear. That's how I feel with knitting and crocheting anyway, and I really feel like I could expand those skills into sewing. I really love these fabrics and I'm really excited. I've been waiting for this creator to finish a pattern of a top that I really like the look of. It might be a little bit challenging for me, but I think it's always better to actually try making something that you would wear and that you want to wear. And also something that's a little bit challenging will always help you to push and learn more from just one project. I think this is a really great segue into shopping my own summer wardrobe before buying more. Even if I want to thrift something rather than buying new, looking at what I already have that I stored away in my cupboards from last year is a really great way to rediscover items you may have forgotten about. Of course, there are plenty of reasons why we want to buy new clothes. For me, my body has changed, and so I feel a little insecure in some of the clothes I had from last year. My initial thought is I just want to get rid of them and I just want to buy new clothes. And that's perfectly okay. The summertime can be a pretty tricky time for anyone. If you're wearing shorts that you don't feel particularly comfortable in, swimsuits and things like that, it's important that you do what's right for you. But I really suggest looking at your own wardrobe first. seeing what you do like and what you don't, perhaps decluttering what you aren't going to wear, and maybe replacing them with something thrifted, or even, in my case, I'm trying to make my own clothes. As always, these are just habits that I have been working on specifically this year. There are, of course, lots of other things that I naturally do that I honestly just cannot remember because they've become so ingrained in my natural routine. But all this to say is that starting small is the best place to start, because any habit can grow and become something more valuable, more helpful, and more economical in your life. I would love to hear what your zero waste habits are, or just things that you're interested in looking into. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a like, it really supports my channel. And make sure to subscribe so that you never miss another video. Okay, I'll see you in the next video where we're going to be decluttering and cleaning my whole house. We'll see if my habits have changed and whether what I said last year about never wanting to declutter again stands true. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.